Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbong. We are currently in Black History Month, and we've got two books for you today that, you'll probably find them in the history section, but they both make a point of grounding themselves in the present. In a bit, we'll hear about the 27 Tuskegee Airmen who went missing during flights overseas. It's a book of reporting that would not be possible if not for the records and letters passed down from generation to generation. But first, sports writer Howard Bryant has a book out about two civil rights figures who were pitted against each other on the national stage. The book is titled Kings and Pawns, Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson in America. And while the book is set in the late 1940s and early 1950s during a period known as the Red Scare, and Robinson and Robeson are both long gone, Bryant tells NPR's Scott Simon that a critical character in the story is Jackie Robinson's widow, Rachel Robinson, who is still alive today. How's that for the past not being all that past? That's after the break.
This message comes from Midi Health, a virtual care platform for women in perimenopause and menopause. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Kathleen Jordan shares the wide range of symptoms they work to address for women in midlife.
There's dry eyes, dry hair, dry skin, there's dry mouth, trouble sleeping, panic and anxiety attacks. When we ask patients about common symptoms, on average, they report 6.
Midi Health, committed to helping women in midlife with perimenopause and menopause care, accessible via telehealth visits at joinmidi.com.
Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson were both heroes. Robinson, the great athlete who broke baseball's color barrier and inspired millions across America with his courage under a hail of hatred. As Count Basie's band sang,
"Hit the sheet, Jackie Robinson, hit that ball. It went zooming across the left field wall. Yeah, boy."
And Paul Robeson, who'd been a college football star, then played in the NFL, while he went to Columbia Law School and would become one of the most admired bass baritone singers in the world.
Old Man River, that old man River, he must know something.
Both men were mighty advocates for equal rights. Though they never met, they were brought into public disagreement during the period of McCarthyism and what became known as the Red Scare. Howard Bryant, who talks about sports on our show, has a new book, Kings and Pawns, Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson in America. And Howard joins us now. Thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Scott.
Howard, please set the scene for us. July 1949. Why was Jackie Robinson asked to appear before the House Un-American Activities Committee?
It was a time when the Cold War was beginning to ramp up to a point where, for the next 40 years, where the United States and the Soviet Union were mortal enemies. The great Robeson had given a speech saying that he thought it was unthinkable that the African-American community would fight on behalf of the United States, or something to that effect, when the Soviet Union had lifted up non-white people to a state of humanity, or a place of humanity. Now, he had never said those words. He had been quoted by the Associated Press. And the response, of course, was extremely vocal against. And the response was to find an African-American to counter Robeson's speech. You have to remember that Paul Robeson was one of the most famous, if not the most famous, Black American in the world at that time. And the House Un-American Activities Committee went to Jackie Robinson, who at that time was also the most famous Black person in America, to testify against Robeson.
I haven't any comment to make except that, on that statement, except that if Mr. Robeson actually made it, it sounds very silly to me. But he has a right to his personal views, and if he wants to sound silly when he expresses them in public, that's his business and not mine.
Howard, what was the effect?
The effect was extremely damaging to Robeson. His personal status had been declining anyway, but Jackie's testimony really did turn the rest of the country against Robeson, whatever was left of Robeson's reputation.
I know, I feel compelled to point out. I mean, of course, Jackie Robinson, who had served in the U.S. Army, was also briefly court-martialed for refusing to move to the back of a bus on an Army base in Texas. I mean, he was not a pushover for anyone.
No, and that's the hard thing about this. I think what I was trying to get at in this project was you have these two gigantic figures, and both of them were in this position of advocacy for their people. And the most compelling thing I found here was the lengths that both of them felt like they had to go, only to end up really disillusioned by the time they reached the end of their lives, because neither one sort of felt as though they accomplished that goal.
I have to ask, in these times, why didn't Paul Robeson denounce the rule of Joseph Stalin, especially after the Soviet Union itself exposed some of the cruelties of Stalin's regime?
I think part of it is pride, the pride of being a ball player, of being that Robeson believed that the United States had blood on its hands as well. And he said so in his own testimony to HUAC in 1956, where you've killed 60 million of my people. And I'm not going to discuss this with you. And I think he felt like there was that the motivation of the committee was simply to get him to admit he was wrong about Russia, when what he wanted was for the United States to admit that it had been wrong in what it had done to African Americans. And also out of pain. I think that the Robeson piece of this was very, very painful too, because he believed in the Soviet experiment like a lot of people did. And I think that in a lot of ways, it was sort of like a man without a country, that he had believed in this new experiment in Russia, just as he had once believed in the experiment in the United States. And both, I think, had sort of betrayed his ideals.
You're right today that the U.S. might be going through a period of retrenchment, similar to what you saw what we saw in the years of the Red Scare.
Well, that's right. Well, so much of the playbook today feels like the second Red Scare. You have the attack on left-wing and progressive politics. You have the attack on the arts and the defunding of the arts. The vitriol, the sort of the language that we hear today is very similar to the language that we were hearing then. And it was fascinating to me how the parallels feel even more and more urgent. What is past is prologue.
Two great men, Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson, had tough later years, didn't they?
They did. And I think that I felt such compassion in a lot of ways for both of them, for these two great men. Robeson lost everything and had been forgotten in a lot of ways. And and that has translated into today as well. I mean, when I talk to young black kids about Paul Robeson, when I talk to black people about Paul Robeson my age, they don't know who he is. And when I think about Jackie, it's somewhat similar, even though, of course, he remains an icon and people know the name Jackie Robinson. But what they don't know is that, the disillusionment that he felt. So it's this really sort of bittersweet story, and also inspiring to me, though, of these two people who did everything that the United States had asked of them, and yet both wound up in a very disillusioned place.
Rachel Robinson, bless her, still with us.
103 years old, Scott.
Maybe we should end with how she sees it.
Rachel Robinson is such an important character in this book and in the story of Jackie Robinson. People need to know that when Jackie, for everything that we talk about today, baseball was tired of Jackie Robinson. The sport could not wait to get rid of him. The Dodgers traded him to the hated Giants in 1956 at the end of the season. They were tired of him fighting for civil rights. They were tired of him complaining about the American racial order. If it's not for Rachel Robinson and her charm and her intelligence and her determination to restore Jackie's reputation and her grit, she's the one who brought Jackie back. She's the one who went to the Dodgers. She's the one who went to Major League Baseball and said, don't forget this man. And so to me, there's no telling this story of Jackie Robinson and his place in American history right now without Rachel. Rachel is really the one who made it happen.
Howard Bryant, talk to you next week.
Oh, my pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
His new book, Kings and Pawns, Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson in America.
This message comes from Jerry. Many people overpay for car insurance because switching feels like too much hassle. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry compares rates side by side from over 50 top insurers and helps you switch with ease. Jerry even tracks market rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. No spam calls or hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Switch with confidence. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/NPR today.
Cheryl W. Thompson is an investigative journalist here at NPR, and her book, Forgotten Souls, The Search for the Lost Tuskegee Airmen, is a result of present-day reporting, talking to people, picking up the phone. She talks to NPR's Ayesha Rascoe about the value in showing people that the loved ones they lost long ago are not forgotten. Here's Ayesha.
The Tuskegee Airmen are now celebrated as true American heroes. These Black men fought in World War II for a country still brutally segregated that treated them as less than full citizens. Later, these men who shattered the color line as combat pilots were awarded some of the nation's highest honors. But some never got to see any tributes. They never made it home. A new book tells the stories of the 27 Black airmen who went missing during flights overseas, leaving their families forever changed and still looking for answers. NPR investigative correspondent Cheryl W. Thompson is the author of Forgotten Souls, The Search for the Lost Tuskegee Airmen, and she joins us now. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Ayesha. Thanks for having me.
First, I want to talk to you about how this book, it really shines a light on the lives of these men. Was there anything that surprised you about their personal lives when you started doing this research?
I think the one thing that surprised me most was really how young they were. But in their letters and in their conversations with relatives, they seemed so much older because they had to grow up so quickly. But most of them were fresh out of college. The oldest one was 28. The youngest one, I believe, was 20. The other was just the kind of lives they led before they went off to war. I don't think any of them were wealthy. They came from all over the country. You know, they were just these typical sort of starry-eyed men who just wanted to serve this country and do something good.
Yeah, and I found it so powerful to hear from some of these pilots in their own words through their letters to their loved ones. And could you read a letter from John Henry Chavis? He was writing to his mother about his soon-to-be bride, who he called Cookie.
Okay. I'm still a very lucky guy. Look at the nice letter I got from her mother. The next time you talk to Cookie, be sure to welcome her to the Chavis family. By the way, when are you going to congratulate me? I'm sure you're happy over my having such a perfect girlfriend.
How did you feel going through these personal effects? And how did you get this letter?
So I got this letter from Chavis's nephew and niece. You know, I got lucky. Journalism is a lot about luck, but writing this book was a lot about luck, too, because so many of these relatives actually kept or letters were handed down from other relatives to them. And they just, to their credit, they kept them.
Reading that letter from Chavis filled with all of this hope and joy, the other part of the book is that it makes it really sad when you learn of the tragedy of his disappearance on a mission in February 1945. The military blamed engine trouble for Chavis's plane going down. But as the book shows, there is often just a lack of clarity about what happened when these pilots went missing. Was that just a feature or just the nature of war at that time? Were these type of crashes common?
Well, there was a lot going on because there was a war going on.
Yeah.
But I think that the Black pilots were ignored more than others. If they went down in enemy territory, the government say, well, it was too dangerous for us to go and search for them. Okay, fine.
Yes.
But then there's after the war.
Yeah. Talk to me about the impact on the families. They would get the telegram that their loved ones were MIA, and a year later they would be declared dead. And how did they deal with just the not knowing?
I don't think, and I think I'm safe in saying this for the families I met with and talked to repeatedly, they never got over it, right? They never got over it because some of them still have siblings and they're in their 90s now. And It destroyed their parents, not only moms, but dads as well, who just, there was one father who just didn't want his son to be to go off to war.
He didn't want him to go.
He didn't want him to go because he knew.
He didn't want to lose him.
He didn't want to lose him. And he lost him. And for the children, right, because some of them had children, the oldest one I found at the time her dad disappeared was 3. Mm-hmm. And she's now 84. Yeah. And she has said to me, and I talked to her just the other day because I keep in touch with these families, because it's sort of like, when you spend time with these people over years, you just have a relationship, you develop some kind of relationship with them. And she says, I'm still waiting. I'm hoping that one day, somebody will knock on my door and say, we found your dad.
Why do you think this hasn't been talked about more? I mean, I feel like we hear, not saying that we could ever hear enough about the Tuskegee Airmen, but we hear about the honors. They, in the State of the Union, they're getting an honor at the White House. But why haven't we talked more about those that were lost and their remains were not found? Why have we not talked about that?
That's a good question. That's a question you should pose to the government and ask them, like, what are you guys doing? Why hasn't this come up? Because they were honored, back in, I want to say it was 2007 by the George W. Bush White House, when they got the Congressional Medal of Honor. And so those who were, still around, of course, went to the White House, and they were very touched by it. The families I got to know, I think, would be happy with someone knocking on their door, picking up the phone, saying, you know what, we haven't forgotten about your dad. We haven't forgotten about your brother. We haven't forgotten about your uncle, something. But to have crickets is probably the most hurtful thing for them.
That's Cheryl W. Thompson. She's our colleague here at NPR's investigative unit. Her new book is Forgotten Souls, The Search for the Lost Tuskegee Airmen. Cheryl, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ayesha, for having me.
And that's it for this week on NPR's Book of the Day. Let us know what you think. You can write to us at bookoftheday@npr.org. I'm Andrew Limbong. The podcast is produced by Chloe Weiner and Ivy Buck and edited by Sarah Crawford and Megan Sullivan. Our founding editor is Petra Mayer. The show Elements for this week were produced and edited by Melissa Gray, Danny Hensel, Emiko Tamagawa, Todd Munt, Elena Torek, Ashley Brown, Lena Muhammad, Gabe O'Connor, Jacob Fenston, Ryan Benk, and Ed McNulty. Yolanda Sanguini is our executive producer. Thanks for listening.
This message comes from Betterment. Their automated investing and saving tools give you the quiet confidence of someone who knows where to put their money. With tax-smart tools that help grow your after-tax returns year-round. Get started today at Betterment.com. That's BetterMent.com. Investing involves risk. Performance not guaranteed. Betterment is not a tax advisor, nor should any information herein be considered tax advice. Please consult a qualified tax professional.
This message comes from Midi Health, introducing AgeWell, longevity care designed by women for women. Whether you're looking to prevent future health issues or just feel more like yourself, learn more at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
This message comes from Mattress Firm. Tired of waking up sore? Mattress Firm sleep experts can match you with a Tempur-Pedic Adapt mattress built to relieve pressure. Shop the President's Day sale and save up to $500 on select Tempur-Pedic sets. Restrictions apply.